Hi, my name is Travis Erridge, and this is Uncommon.
Uncommon is a production by Neuralle, an agency that helps both brands and talent tell their story. To learn more, just visit neuralle.com. That's Neuralle.com. My guest this week, Travis Erridge, co-founder and CEO of TM Insight, plus also a BGS old boy. We're just having a good yarn about all that downstairs. Any fond memories of the old Rolfie days? Back at the singing school?
Yeah, he was just nuts. So I think we were all scared of him. And then when we finally got to an age where we could probably handle him, he left. Yeah, we had Mr. Irwin changed in year 12. But he was a fairly scary guy. And just the memories for me were, and we were talking about before, I don't think I'd ever been to church before I went to school. I don't think I've been since, other than at weddings and funerals and things, but him just singing, he'd go crazy singing the hymns at school, just a nutter.
The old hymn book, but I remember there was like a gag between like us students that, particularly when you get to like year 12, you would have like a yelling match with certain hymns. There was repeat hymns that they would do because no one cared at all about them. But it was very, very funny. But it's funny you mentioned that people were scared of that headmaster. I feel like everyone's scared of the headmaster until they realise when you get to 18, and particularly when you go back for the reunions, like they're kind of like, there's something endearing about, like I saw Mr. Irwin like recently.
Right.
I rarely get back to Brighton. My parents live around the area.
Yeah.
And I saw him walking around and like he's just a jovial old man now. Yeah. It's funny the way that you perceive things at a younger age, I think.
For sure. Absolutely.
So speaking of younger age, what's your earliest memory from your childhood?
Well, I grew up in Hampton, so the earliest memory I've got is probably catching the bus from where I used to live down to Hampton Street to go shopping. And back in the day, Hampton Street was literally where you went and got food and other things. It's not now just cafes and going out.
Which bus? The 803?
No, I can't remember. I can't remember what the number was. It went down Sargent Street, that's all I know.
Oh, okay.
Down Medical Road, yeah.
I used to live off Weir Street when we moved to Brighton. Like, grew up in Bentley, then we moved to Brighton.
Yeah.
And we were off Weir Street, and the 803 was like, there was one, it was like an 841, and it would go up like South Road and through Hampton on the way to Southland.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, God, those are the days, huh?
No,
when was the last time you were on a bus?
Never. Never. Maybe grape grazing or something when someone's organised it. Yeah, not a public bus.
What did you think you were going to do when you were a kid?
I think I was probably fireman or policeman or something like that. I think it then shifted into army or something sort of, testosterone fueled. I wasn't. What I'm doing today is nothing what I thought I was going to do. Yeah.
And I mean, I know you graduated from BGS in 96. How did you come to find construction as the thing that you were going to do? Did you have the classic sit down? Did they even have a career counsellor back then?
Yeah, they did. It was Mr. Mann, and he was 2 maths, 2 science, and on your way and go to Melbourne Uni or to Monash were the two that you had to go to. But yeah, I was lucky enough. My sister, so I'm the youngest of the entire family, and my sister was going out with a project manager at the time, and I just remember he gave me a calendar, like this embroidered calendar thing, and I thought, that's pretty cool. And that was his Christmas present, which he got from work for free and was handing it out to me for my Christmas present.
Embroidered calendar.
Yeah, and so I sort of asked what he did, and that's when he said, look, I did construction management at RMIT, go to RMIT, and I hadn't even thought of going to RMIT. So I changed all of my preferences in the last minute in year 12 to do construction at RMIT, which was just random. My girlfriend at the time told me that enjoy building spice racks for the rest of your life. So that was good. She was pretty confident about where I was going.
Still with that girlfriend?
No, surprisingly not. I went to RMIT for that reason and hated it, failed every subject in first year. Just about got kicked out at the end of that first year. I knew I was in trouble when I turned up for my first exam, and it was an open book, and I didn't actually have the book.
Oh, my God.
So, contact time wasn't high. I'd sort of been pushed pretty hard through year 12 and then sort of just went completely off the rails in the first year and then got basically threatened. And one of my best mates actually came and joined me at uni the second year. So we pretty much started first year again in the second year.
So you spent the next few years, I mean, I know you spent 4 years at SKM, then was Carson, Goodman, which was more of a focus on the industrial space, and then you had about a year at Robert Luxmore, then obviously founded TM Insight. I remember listening to a prior interview, you essentially, it was really the GFC that pushed you in a way into that space. You'd had those years at Goodman, which I think, was the whole business focused on industrials, or were you just given that segment?
No, they had a small commercial part, but it was mainly industrial. So I was working on the industrial. Most
of those people were made redundant during or around the GFC.
Yep.
I remember being made redundant not redundant, but I got fired during the GFC coming out of just a few years out of high school, and everyone was like freaking out.
Yeah.
That was that 2008 period, and everyone thought like we'd be in a recession, and then 9 months later everything was fine. So I very distinctly remember that period. And you and your business partner, he was in Perth. This is Milan.
Yeah.
He was in Perth, and then the former clients, in a way, just came to you guys.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we sort of were pretty well entrenched at Goodman and sort of thought, that's our career, had zero intent to leave, change, do anything, because it was just such a fun and enjoyable place to work, and there was heaps of opportunity. They were growing dramatically worldwide and Australia. And so Milan had been picked off and taken to Western Australia. I was doing development management work. And then, the world ended, but it sort of ended pretty slowly. It was a weird time because sort of September 2008 was when it really hit the financial, and I think same time as Lehman Brothers went under and a few other things happened at about that time. And that was sort of when the world was in a lot of trouble. But even a year before that, we started to see signs with Centro and others in Australia that there was some problems ahead, which we'd never seen before. We had no idea, and in hindsight, when you look back on it now, there was a lot of warning signs coming to that point, but we had no idea. So for the last 6 months, we kicked a football around the office, pretended to the outside market that we had money so that we wouldn't get our share price destroyed, and weren't allowed to do a deal. So we basically got to January 2009 and all got kicked out on the street in one day, and it was like a rolling through offices. But Milan, because he was in Western Australia, it was too hard to get to Western Australia for the boss, so he got a stay of execution for another 3 weeks, I think, after that. Yeah.
Wow.
But it sort of forced us into it. Otherwise, we would never have done it. So it was. I just remember pretty crappy times, to be honest, at the time, and you go pretty low because you're sort of on this trajectory of where you're going career-wise, and it's all in front of you, and then it just stops. So we ended up on the street. And the Luxmore job was actually a job for Woolworths via a consultancy.
Really? Right.
So I was doing finding the sites for masters and other things when they were under the cover of darkness. I didn't come up with their business plans, so don't blame me for that. I just found their sites. But so it really forced us into it. And it was at that time that a couple of ex-clients came and said, look, we're trying to do this. Can you give us a hand? And Milan being Milan, he's just pretty direct. He's like, well, we can either compete with each other or we can go into business together. I said, well, why not?
Yeah.
And we'd known each other for a long time. We worked at Castle Group together. We worked at Goodman and Macquarie Goodman together. Right. So we'd actually known each other pretty well. And so, we for the first 2 years, I did my stuff, he did his stuff. We had our own clients. It was a happy time. The young family, it was great.
I remember you mentioning in this interview about just working out of the extra bedroom.
Yeah.
I mean, looking back at that must be very interesting in terms of the complexity of the business now. at 150 people?
I loved it, to be honest. I'd been suit and tie every day, and then I'm turning up and doing these meetings with New Zealand at 6 a.m. in my undies, like on the conference call. They didn't have video calling then at that point, thank God, but, you know, a lot of... The third bedroom had all these mirrors across where we used to live, and so I'd just be staring at myself laughing during during these conference calls with the CEOs and so forth.
Oh, that's so funny.
But yeah, I think it got a bit more serious 2 years later. So for those first 2 years, we had great clients like Kmart, Bunnings, bought Longyear and a few other clients, but you know, it got really serious beyond that when we started employing people, and you started to sort of go, shit, I've got to start thinking about this because I've got someone that's paying their rent off the back of this. It's not just Milan and myself. If we make money or don't make money, it doesn't matter. It's our problem.
Yeah.
We actually started to employ people and having to worry about where the future and where it was going. So it did change.
Because I know you mentioned this interview as well, that so your dad had worked in the public sector, right?
Yeah.
So he's worked in the public sector. There's not... I don't know if there's much about entrepreneurship in the family at all, but you're obviously thrown into this situation by necessity. Where did the two most important factors come into it, which is probably the hard work? Where do you think you saw that over your early lifetime? And the responsibility element, because that's, you know, when you start getting into employing people, it is a responsibility.
Yeah, for sure.
It feels like it weighs on me a lot, and I know we've only got like 5 staff, and you guys got 150.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm curious around that hard work and responsibility component.
Yeah, look, I mean, going back, my dad used to work 7 to 7 in the public sector, and I don't think I ever saw him change his job through that time. So he basically said to me, I sent you to a private school. You're not to go and work for the government ever. That's the rule. And look, it wouldn't have suited me anyway. I think personality type, my mother's side are farmers, so there is no entrepreneurial part to the business. I guess farming's a little bit like that, but...
it can be.
Yeah, but I think, I don't know is the answer. No one else in my family probably has the same sort of get up and go. My mother would always say you're either going to be bankrupt or a millionaire. There's no in between with the way that you do stuff. So,
wow.
But yeah, I think it's a bit of a natural thing, and I think we always wanted to do something by myself, or always had this aching, you know, I want to do my own business, I want to do this. So it was sort of inbuilt in me, but I knew I had to get the right training. And for me, it was always, you know, go and work at the best company you can, do the biggest projects you can do, and it'll come after that. So,
do you find that naturally, as an individual, you have sort of this openness or creativity where if you're working on a project, you're thinking... Like, do you have this insatiable thinking bigger complex that a lot of entrepreneurs have?
I haven't thought about it. I think I certainly hated uni, so like that just wasn't me.
Yeah.
I think everything for me has to be practical. I've got to be able to see it and be able to touch it, and it needs to make sense to me. I think... there's always this view of why are we here? What am I supposed to be doing? Am I supposed to be working for someone, or should I be doing this? And you've only got this one life to do something with. So I've always had this get up and go. But I tried to import a product. I started a mowing business before I finished school. So there's all these sort of things that when you look back on it, there were signs that I was always going to do something by myself, but I just didn't really know how to do it. And then when you get forced into it with the GFC, you got no choice. You just have to do it.
Anytime you're I think the force component is, for a lot of people, like a major, like people underestimate how much of a factor it is. Like whether you're forced because you have to, you're forced because you've got to scratch your own itch.
Yeah.
You know, because someone's not facilitating a solution for a certain industry. I feel like that from a lot of the people that we interview, particularly who are challengers or disruptors at some level, generally have that in some way.
Yeah, I think the big difference is that I've seen it now, that people go into it thinking, I'm doing this because I'm going to make money, and that's a very different view to like you're doing it for. And look, of course we're doing it to make money. Don't get me wrong, but
the reality gets pretty quick.
Yeah, but you're actually doing it to to actually, because you enjoy it, you're trying to find something you enjoy, and I think then you work harder than you've ever worked in your life.
Yeah.
Whereas I think if you're working for someone and you're not enjoying it, that's why I moved jobs nearly every single time. Was the projects I was working on were crap, and I was sort of over it, and so just constantly wanting to do something different. You can only blame yourself when you're in charge of yourself. If the projects aren't what you want to do, you can only blame yourself.
And I think you hit the nail on the head. I think having something other than just money is like, I make more than enough money, but I'm never ever comfortable, if that makes sense. Not from the money side of things, but just the doing stuff.
For sure.
I don't know. There's something about it that I can't be, like if I'm bored, like you said, I had a similar thing with employers where I sort of would move on because I got bored pretty bloody quickly.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that is about someone's personality, but for me, it was always sort of just thinking a bit bigger.
I always laugh. I mean, when I got given the job at Goodman, I rang them back an hour later and said, by the way, how much am I getting paid? I'd taken the job without even knowing what I was getting paid. But for me, it was like, that's the exact experience I want to get into property development. That's the experience I want to get into. So I think you sort of had that idea, and the reality was I knew we'd get paid well if we got things going where we needed to get them going, but also we didn't want to be a consultancy. We'd worked in those environments where you do a little bit of everything and you're just constantly under the pump by management to do another job. You're doing a poor job for clients. Like we wanted to sort of change like we're almost working in-house and helping people do what they're doing.
So I think two of the major components of your business, so I always say to a lot of entrepreneurs or people who think they're going to get into business, that they say the first sale is hard, but I don't know if I'd agree with that. I actually think, because you guys had those first couple of years, and from a lot of the times, they're always coming from your own network, so that you've built that trust component.
Yeah, that's right.
It's the second order sales that are quite hard, I find, and scaling that from complete strangers, and that was the issue we found in the first years. Like, how do you convince someone to trust you? And I was, when I looked at it, I thought, is it the fact that you guys niche down and specialise in this industrials space, or had the runs on the board? What do you think, and when do you think was the moment that you realised you had scale after that first 2-year period?
Yeah. So for the first 2 years, they weren't clients we'd actually worked with, the people within those businesses that we knew. That's how we got in there, but we sort of had to cold call our way in. I think we were lucky enough that went for a period of time, and then we came out the other side of that and thought, you know what, we'll pick up Target, we'll pick up Coles, all the sister brands and so forth, and it didn't happen. We didn't pick up any of them.
Really?
And we actually got pretty nervous there in that sort of third year, like, oh shit, because it was all just happening. And yes, we were the only show in town in that niche industrial project management space, working for clients. We were the only major business. There was lots of one-man bands running around doing things, but we were the only business playing in that space at that time. So we just assumed we'd walk into it. What we found was, and who we now own with Exact, they were using their supply chain team as their entry point, as their gateway. Okay. So it became clear to us that we had to have a point of difference. Like the big difference was, you can't just be the best in class at what you do. You've got to have a very clear point of difference, and it's got to align with what the clients want, not what you want. So the clients didn't want a project management business to deliver something if they haven't worked out what they're doing first. So we had to change our business because of that. Yeah.
So that was the moment that you realised that integration was the way.
We were going to go. It was either that or go out of business, because we could see what Exact were doing was going through the supply chain team, talking about their needs and their wants and what they need. They were then saving them a heap of money in the front end, that when they go and deliver the project, there was already such a huge saving that they didn't need to tender off the remaining parts of it, and it was continuity about having one business do it.
Yeah.
So we tried to partner with companies to start a supply chain business, which didn't work, and then we started our own, and it was just it's actually a freaky moment, but the guy who started our supply chain business was actually our biggest client. He was head of Kmart supply chain.
That's right, yeah.
And he rang me up. We were just about to do the West Australian deal, and he rang me up. He goes, "Oh, Trav, I'm leaving Kmart." Oh shit! What does this mean for West Australia? He goes, "Yeah, don't worry about that. I'm coming to work with you." And I was like, we're not ready for this. So yeah, we designed a structure of the business at that point that gave him ownership in a sub business, and it started this continuous thing that happened for the next 3 years where we gave up bits of the business to grow it. But that was forced again on us in terms of him not having a job and just deciding he's going to join us and causing issues with Kmart at the time as well. That their head of supply chain is now joining our business. But that was one of the big changes, 2014. That was one of the big step changes.
Integration has become massive in the consulting game just because you can offer so many aspects of that whole life cycle. I think that's what Macquarie Bank has done so well in the finance space. They own so many, like 80%, I saw the statistic the other day, of the entire life cycle of a financial relationship, with whether it's personal banking, private banking, asset management, whatever. They just, transactions, they're involved in everything. So how, over the years leading up to, say, now with the recent merger with Exact, what were the key bolt-on components that you saw? So you had construction predominantly back then in those first 2 years. You brought in supply chain. What were the key pivotal moments, do you think?
Yeah, so we brought supply chain very much to try and get to the front end of clients' decision making, that we could actually control the back end of their delivery. But then we realised fairly quickly that we were outsourcing the property component of it and the fees.
Like the construction of it?
No, the land acquisition component of it, okay. So the property acquisition piece. Yeah. And the fees that were in that were extraordinary, but we weren't touching them. And it all came to a head. We had a couple of the major real estate firms try and buy us at that point. So in 2015, we had 2 offers on the table to sell the entire business because they wanted our construction, they wanted our supply chain team. And we soon realised that we're not touching the full end-to-end. The world is changing, so e-commerce started to go through the roof. Automation in warehousing started to become a huge factor, and that led to a lot of headcount change. Traditional jobs were now being changed to automated, which meant there was a change management bit and a headcount rationalisation piece to a lot of companies. So privacy, confidentiality, everything that a real estate agent doesn't stand for. And, here we are ringing a real estate agent in Brisbane or Sydney or Melbourne to do the land acquisition component, and they're telling the entire market that we're working with Fonterra we haven't told staff that there's, 200 people that are going to be made redundant. That, these things were big decisions and 10, 15-year decisions in leaning out supply chains so we realised fairly quickly we have to bring that in-house. So we went and found the best agents in Australia and actually offered them an ownership structure within the business, because they're all paid too much to try and bring them in. But we said, you're not allowed to work for landlords, you've got to change your mindset, no commission structures. Wow. And they joined, and 2 of them joined straight away, and the 3rd joined a little bit later. Subsequently. So then we worked in teams. So we didn't have silos of departments. We just work in teams. So we need one of those, one of these, one of that, put them on the project. So, which a lot of the multidisciplinary companies found it hard because they work in departments. Yeah. So
there's a really interesting thing you mentioned before. So you've now got supply chain, construction, and the land acquisition component, all very big components. But at each stage, you've really brought on partners and you've sold the idea to them. Yeah. So, and this is a thing that we're thinking about now, because we're, a digital agency plus talent. I'm starting to think about, do we bring in a partner on the talent side to run the day-to-day? How did you pitch this to them? Because you're in a business that's maybe it's harder I would say it's harder in your space because there's a lot more in terms of assets that are involved. So it is harder. I'm sure there's non-competes. If people move away, it's harder to do that. But how have you viewed that in a way? Have you looked at it like, I'd rather have a small component of something big and take the risk of them potentially leaving? Or how have you looked to sort of rationalise bringing in external partners that you don't fully trust, as well as, say, Milan?
Yeah, that's right. Well, a
Well,
lot of them were known to me. So along that journey, if you look at a lot of those partners, we'd worked in some way, shape, or form over the last 20 years on something. Yes, a couple of them weren't as well known, and we've got to know each other a hell of a lot more since. I think the structuring that we had meant that not one part of the business could control the other part of the business. So, so the structuring of it. So if the whole property department left, it wouldn't pull the whole business down. Yes, it would make it harder, but we could always replace if project management left, those sorts of things. So we actually promoted some people internally to shareholding to shore up the position. And we really wanted the best in each industry. So for us, I think we're working at SKM, we were probably best at project management, but probably had a fairly high turnover of some of the designers or architects. So it was always an argument of a client was, we're happy to have your project management arm, but we're probably better architects that we can get out there or whatever. Yeah. If you're going to become one-stop shop, you have to be best in class. So the people we went and got were the highest fee earners in Western Sydney. And in order to get them in, they had to sell a story of ownership and what it meant to people, especially real estate agents that had worked 1 year to 1 year and that's it, and everything revolves around 12 months to say, look, this is a 10-year plan and this is where we're going. Jump on board. And look, the wives were the hardest, to be honest, to convince. And wives and boyfriends, they were sort of like, I don't know, you got a great job, why would you go and do this? So I think trying to convince them when you've got zero, to go from zero to... And some of these guys were, turning over $1 million of fees a year to come and join, and probably taking home $500,000 a year or something, to come and join us with nothing. And if you make money, you make money. If you don't, you don't. It's a big jump, so you got to give them respect. But I think it was more around, we talked about trends in the market. We talked about where we saw it, what we were starting to see, and the points of difference. And it turned out we were correct.
Yeah. Who was the hardest to pitch? What was the hardest pitch that you had?
It's probably more the recent ones because I asked too many questions. The guys jumping in early were like, I can see where it's going, I'm on. And look, one guy I still remember, he's probably the most anally retentive guy in our business, and he's a great fella, but he just wanted stats, right? Give me the numbers. How many square metres did you do last year? How many in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane? And then he went away and did the sums. He signed up the next day. So he was like what I thought was going to be the hardest. He was probably the easiest. I think the others, as the bits of pie became smaller and the business became bigger, that became hard. We had a number of people say no to us. And there was people that I reckon I was on the phone till 9 o'clock at night for months on end trying to convince them to switch across. But yeah, it became a lot easier. As the business started really ramping up and getting a name for itself, it became easier. And once we brought property in, they come in with a PR, view set, which is... We hadn't advertised the business for 8 years, and then all of a sudden,
it's all been organic.
We're in the paper. The name is there. People are starting to get to know who we are. So it does become easier. Everyone that you gave that opportunity early doors, that you went back to have a talk, still wants the early deal, but the world's moved on a fair bit.
Just a little bit. Was there any partners that walked away after the first few years, or that you had to sort of split from?
Yeah, there was one that and didn't go well at all. So there was one that we started a whole new business around. So we were in the industrial game, and this one wanted to do a hotels gig, and that was her background. And she decided to walk with very limited notice, and it got pretty ugly, to be honest. It's trying to unwind a business with current projects and things on, and there was obvious that the business had gone away from what she wanted, so that was cool. So it was really moving away from a really small niche boutique business to a growing, and the investment was all going into the industrial side. So I fully get it. I understand it was probably more how it happened that made it hard. Yeah. So that was an unwinding of a shareholder. That's the only one that we've had leave. I really don't want to go back to the Supreme Court again.
No. So you think in the services business, in a service-based business, the way to grow and become a market leader is to just bring on Well, there's the integrated approach, which I think has become apparent the last 10 years.
Yeah.
But do you think it's about bringing the right partners predominantly?
Yeah, and maybe they're not the best in the industry, but they've got the right attitude. I think we found by having a team approach to things, we could turn people that were okay in the outside world into, really high-level performers, because they would say, we've got something to sell now. I'm not just selling myself. We've got like a product that we can actually sell.
Yeah.
I think our sales was a more genuine sales than a lot of property sales. It was trying to open up the hood and look under and see what the problems are, and then having a really open conversation with the client about the steps that we need to go through, and are they ready for the journey, or do they want to do something short term and wait? There was no commission breath as we talk. You didn't have to transact a deal because no one was employed or remunerated that way, which meant that we could actually look at, okay, your best move is in 2 years' time when this property, that property all come up. Let's just delay it. Whereas there's no way a real estate agent would say, just delay it and I'm not going to get paid this year, type thing. So we found that we built a lot of trust with our clients, and we also found that we started to become integral parts of their business, which was really the partnering side of what we were trying to do, which was, rather than them employ a person in-house, they would outsource it to us to be able to do it.
Really?
So partnering was a key thing, and making sure you don't rape and pillage the whole town in the first year. Kmart was our first ever client, and we're now back doing Kmart's work 10 years on. So for me, that's the sort of relationship you want.
You. Yes, you. Are you intrigued by this episode? If so, go to our footer on the website, neurale.com, neuralle.com. We're going to give you an insight. Each week it's going to be on business, marketing, or a topic that we covered in the episode. At all, we'd love your support, and it would help us in developing the intellect around this series. But without going on too much longer, let's get back into this episode. We've been having this discussion internally. I actually took our strategist to meet my old boss, like my first boss who really had an impression on me.
Yeah.
Because she's in the restaurant business and sort of taught me a lot about service. So we've been having this discussion around what does service actually mean amongst our staff. And I'm curious, you've been in this business for a while now. What does service mean to you?
Look, we always talk about acting if it was their own money, if it was their own thing, So I think there's it's being accountable. First and foremost. So if you stuff up, it's your fault. Own it.
Yeah.
We had so many people come in and go, because of this, because of that. Well, at the end of the day, who's accountable? That's what the client wants. The client wants an ass to kick when they need it, and you've got to be there to get it. But equally, I think our relationships get stronger when we've had some of those issues along the journey. But acting like it's their money, I think, giving the right advice financially, both long-term and short-term, assuming if it was your money and what you would actually do with it. I think so often we would see people making decisions on things and go, they're a big company, they can handle it or they can do it. Some point in time, it's going to come back and kick you in the arse.
Yeah.
So really, we hate consultants, right? So that's it. Like I know I am one, I know I've been one. But be part of the company that we're with, we feel like you're part of their team. We sit in their office a lot. There's certain circumstances where people within the client wouldn't even know we're a separate business to the client. But equally, we don't like to have people just sitting full time. They've got to learn off the internal team and develop. Being accountable, I think that's the number one issue that pisses most people off with consultants.
Yeah. And it's funny, you say the exact same thing that we had these guys, Saucy.co, they're sort of the preeminent company at when it comes to sort of e-commerce product sourcing, whether it's components and parts, product R&D, supply chain sort of setup. They're at sort of the front end of what you guys eventually do. Obviously, you're at the bigger end of supply chains, and they're at that sort of R&D initial stage. So they'll get a lot of brands like yourself, like the Kmarts of the world, who reach out to prototype a product, and they're at that sort of testing stage. And I was speaking to them about the fact, where their business is and where yours is. I think it's so funny that you both come in weeks apart. Like they were literally in last week, They've had massive growth like yourself in the last year, I'd say. So I think there was the acquisition, which we can touch on later. Employees at 150. You've got 11 to 12 different service lines, distribution center design, network and design strategy, freight optimization, warehouses, offshore supply chain, land acquisition, portfolio. Like, there's just so much there. And we're at a really pivotal moment for Australia in terms of where supply chains are heading, just because of what has happened during COVID.
Sure. Yeah.
There's the usual chatter about people saying, oh, we've got to move away from China, we've got to focus on this country. And I found it really illuminating during their conversation where they said the reality is that things will probably continue largely as they are in terms of raw goods. You know, like you can only go to China for electronics, batteries, and certain plastics. It's just not going to change.
Yeah.
And you can get some components from India and so forth, and that's totally fine. But what has changed is that supply chain innovation, which is where you guys are at. And I think you spoke about in an interview about this hub and spoke model, which the majors have sort of cottoned on to, I think, in the last couple of years.
For sure, yeah.
So I was curious, from your perspective, what are the sort of key headwinds and tailwinds for e-commerce plus supply chains in the next 5 years, say?
Yeah, I think we've sort of caused a bit of it ourselves. So, you know, Australia and what we've also been doing, we've really focused in on leaning out supply chain so that you can buy a T-shirt at Kmart for $1, you know, like,
Yeah.
and how the hell do you get a T-shirt for $1? Well, you cut money out of every part of the process, but you lean it out. So you have a resource that's expensive touching it once, and that's at the store. And you know, you're really thinking about how you deliver it. Whereas I guess e-commerce requires something totally different to that. So we've gone from this really lean out supply chain to now needing flexible supply chains that have inventory at every location that someone needs it. So the consumer has changed, and that's causing massive disruption on supply chains. And then you look at, okay, well, where are we focused? Well, everyone went and focused in on China and went and put all their manufacturing in China, raw products in China, set up distribution networks out of southern China to come into Australia, did it by state, regionalised it. So we did all of those things. And now we go, okay, well, we need product when we need it, but there's a 5-month lead time to get that T-shirt from Bangladesh through China back out. And the consumer doesn't like red anymore. They like green. It's just changed over the last, few seconds. So we talk about the lean supply chain becoming the agile supply chain. And you don't just go and throw away all the things that you've worked on over the last 10 years, but you are going to have to think a little bit differently. And COVID then supersized it. COVID accelerated 5 or 6 years worth of growth into 3 or 4 months. And yes, people like Kmart, who's a client of ours, we were halfway through their next generation and got stopped and said, right, now work on these sort of parameters.
Do you worry that that's a potential short-sighted mistake though? Because I get what you're saying. So basically it sounds like the opportunity cost of not having as much stock there stored in a warehouse grew massively during COVID because of what happened to global supply chains.
Yeah.
But do you worry at all that if things sort of start turn back to normal, that people have then completely changed their designs, their entire setup for something that may only be a short-term occurrence, or do you think it is always going to be in our generation's head for the next couple of decades?
Yeah, I think we're forever changed, not to the level that COVID took us to, but I think the consumer has changed. So the consumer now wants it however the hell they can get it, right? And and they're more demanding than ever. Back in the day, the retailer determined what the consumer got and when they got it. Now the consumer, if you haven't got it, where I need it, how I need it, I'm going somewhere else.
Yeah.
And then that was already coming. I mean, if you looked at JD.com in China, they could deliver anywhere in the world in 48 hours.
Yeah.
So you imagine, and then you go to, I won't say a name because they might be a client, but you go to such and such and buy a slab of beer online, and it takes 7 days to get to your house. You sort of go, how's that good customer service? So I think we demand a lot more. Same day, next day is now necessary. Like if you buy, we're doing work with a well-known shoe manufacturer and clothing manufacturer, and we actually bought a product from them and then showed them how long it took to get to Australia, and it went via the US, and sort of said, here's the number one issue. If I'm waiting for a top-end shoe, 2 weeks to get a product, I'm more than likely going to say, if it's going to take that long, I'll go down and pay extra to go and buy it off a shelf somewhere.
Yeah. So you got to, in a way, the hardest part now is identifying what's the choke point in the funnel, because what you're saying reminds me of, so this week, every month we'll go down and visit my parents-in-law. They live down in Martha Cove.
Right.
And it's my father-in-law's 70th birthday this weekend, and we got him I don't know if you've ever heard of July Luggage, but it's sort of a newer roller company, very well designed. They've got inbuilt chargers, etc.
All right.
And they're a very strong e-commerce business where they own a lot of their supply chain and manufacturing.
Yeah.
But a lot of the last mile stuff that you were just talking about, they own. So the biggest one that I didn't even think about until they told us the delivery time was monogramming. So we wanted letters monogrammed on the case. Now the case and the colour, they're going to have in any warehouse.
Yeah.
Like, it's pretty easy. But getting that monogram, if it was back in China versus here, would extend that wait time out by weeks.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the stuff that I think you're
Well, I think that's where we would go. So we're going to this really lean supply chain where you manufacture, you do any value adds offshore at the cheaper value add point, and then you bring it into Australia ready to go, and it's literally like a flow through in Australia. So you're trying to get a highly unionised, expensive person in a warehouse to touch it as little as you can, and try and get it to the store level as quickly as you can.
Yeah.
And so that doesn't work with e-commerce. You're trying to pick through to find the pink one or the green one or whatever, and they're just not built for it. So it is putting huge pressure. No one's got the right answer yet, and then you say, well, is it just a blip on the process, and will we just go straight back to lean supply chain? And no, I don't think so. I think the consumer's changed. My mother, I think I've said it a few times now, got a PayPal account, and she's 72. That should scare the hell out of everyone. That she's just sitting there ordering. And I think retail becomes more an experience than a transaction. So the retail end will be more, come and touch and feel and do stuff.
Yeah, and something that guarantees those margins. And I think last mile is a key component of that, which will change supply chains a lot. Like I said, with that case, it should arrive today, actually. I couldn't believe it. We ordered it Friday. It's funny because we actually interviewed the CMO of July Luggage last week, who's a good friend. She sort of joined in on this new series where we interview marketers at disruptive brands, and we hit her up, and she's like, "Yeah, it'll be done Wednesday." I'm like, Jesus, this is just ridiculous. But a lot of people, like you said, alcohol is still one of those areas, and the only options you've got are unfortunately these Uber Eats type services, which add so much margin that it almost makes it untenable and not worthwhile, and you prefer to just not buy it.
Yeah.
And that's the customer experience. So,
but it also extends, like you talk about them owning the supply chain. We talk about our customers having their product thrown across the fence. When when the Australia Post guy comes, he just throws it in. That is actually an extension of the company. So we already saw it in the UK beforehand, where people were controlling their supply chain in the last mile, would come and install it, or would come and deliver it and make sure it's correct, because that's your only touch point with that retailer is the driver.
Yeah.
So we are seeing a whole changing of what's acceptable practice, and I think what we're seeing at the moment is just mad rush, get shit out.
Yeah.
It's not what we're going to see. We're going to see a touch point and consumer, a better consumer experience.
Yeah, better service. I think in that particular component, that's going to be very interesting because my partner and I are fascinated by Japan. I don't know why. It's just we got interested in the food. We went on a holiday there, and we've now been there 3-4 times, and their service experience is unbelievable, particularly mail delivery. Packages is ridiculous. They're so professional, and you would never experience something like that with people tossing packages.
Yeah.
So that'll be very interesting over the next couple of years.
Yeah.
I'm very intrigued about what the next few years looks for you guys. I think we're saying downstairs that you've got a worthy partner and shareholder now in Next Capital, particularly John White, I think is the partner on board with you guys.
He is.
Willing to finance smart and strategic acquisitions. I think now you've got presence in correct me if I'm wrong, Sydney, Melbourne, Singapore, Ho Chi Minh, Hanoi and Tokyo after the acquisition.
Yeah.
There probably going to be some, I don't know if there's going to be changes there. Auckland.
Yeah.
Where do you see the biggest opportunities for your firm, without giving away too much, when it comes to vertical or horizontal integration?
Yeah, well, we've done a 5-year strategic plan with Next Capital, which has been really a great experience to do. And we've had a couple of ex-Bain consulting guys working with us, which has been cool to work with as well, from a startup to a more professional business now to actually, and like the ideas that we've come up with, they've actually put a financing model and a process around how we do it. For us, there's sort of two. One is on a horizontal basis, if you like, in terms of our service offering. We've started a digital part to the business.
I saw that, yeah.
And so that's non-regionalised at the moment. That's across Asia Pac, but very much around the amount of times I sit there in board reports or business cases that we're presenting to the board to say, here is your 5-10 year strategy of how to fulfil. And they go, how does that line up with our e-commerce strategy? And then they'll all argue with each other at the board level whether they're going to be 5% of sales, 10% of sales. And that was pre-COVID. Now it's like a necessity that the clients have to have that digital strategy with their business strategy before we can design a supply chain to fulfill it. Yeah, because I mean, if their digital is going to be 20 or 30%, then the whole design of the supply chain is different. Of sales, or it's a growth area or it's not, they're going to require. So we started that business, but we also found that there wasn't enough skills in Australia to do that. We looked around, we interviewed a few people, and we ended up getting two guys, a guy and a girl from Germany that have been living in Asia for a period of time doing bricks and mortar omni-channel work and also direct e-commerce work. And then we got the director of Adidas e-commerce for the region, who's actually joined the business as well. And so for us, we sort of saw them as moving retailers into omni-channel setups, but also how to place brands on marketplaces and where to put them. So a lot of our customers are brands that don't retail, but are now going to be forced into effectively retailing
direct
themselves.
Consumer,
So we sort of see that as an opportunity. And so that's a pretty significant drive of ours, is to continue to grow that. That will continue to grow our supply chain in those regions. But then on a regional basis, Asia is just, it's 660 million people outside of India and southern China in Southeast Asia alone. Australia and New Zealand is about 30 million. And so we sort of sit there and you go, at the moment, there's about $1,400 US a year being spent by Australians online, and that's obviously gone up. In Asia, it's about 60 cents or something per person. Really? And so if we look at the opportunity, you go, okay, the more sophisticated those markets are, they're coming from a long way back. They all need a supply chain that then suits. They need to automate that supply chain because they've all got the same issue, is people don't want to do some of these jobs, these dark, dangerous, dirty type work. Even though there's lots of manpower, they're automating their warehouses. So we're seeing this pretty significant demand coming from emerging markets in Asia for automation, for smarter supply chains, sophistication. And we're even seeing it in New Zealand as well now. They're coming from a fair way back, trying to catch up.
Really? That'd be very interesting, because I remember in Africa, one of the biggest things that happened is they didn't do much cabling in terms of telephony, but they went straight to wireless.
Yeah.
And Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
So it accelerated that growth in technology, and particularly like app and phone development, immensely. Yeah. Particularly in big economies like Nigeria, etc. So that will be very interesting to see in Southeast Asia, I think, over the coming years.
So we sort of dipped our toe in the water and picked up some pretty significant work straight away, and there is a demand. We actually went to India a year and a bit ago, to Mumbai, to just present to a couple of, and I reckon we had 6 or 7 people saying, yes, we need you straight away. But we kind of thought, look, if we're going to play in those markets, do it properly. Make sure we've got local talent that's with us to do
on
it
the
on the ground. So we haven't gone anywhere where we can't get locals and ourselves with expats to make it work. Vietnam is a significant growth area for us, and will continue to be that. And it's one of the big winners out of the China, US, Australia sort of spat is a lot of people are moving parts of their operations into Vietnam.
Yeah.
So we're seeing a fairly significant growth there. Thailand, we're seeing growth. Singapore, we're seeing growth. And then we've also now been asked for work in the Philippines and Indonesia. I think that's where the opportunity lies. It's just very hard. I mean, it's hard to have, you've got to have the right people, trusted people over there, because our experience to date has been probably fairly poor in terms of we paid for a lot of money for someone previously to sit over there and they were doing their own thing the whole time and no one managing them. So the propensity of expats over there that are up to, multiple things is pretty high. Yeah.
Okay. Before we jump into rapid fire questions, I've got to ask you, you do a few of these interviews now, or you've done a few of these interviews. What's something you don't get asked often that you wish you could talk about topic-wise?
Oh, we don't sort of talk about retention of people enough. Like that's our. How do you retain people? How do you keep them? How do you do stuff like that? I think for us, that's our only asset is our people. That's our digger and our concrete truck is our people. And I think we get held to, the entrepreneurs and what we're doing, but the reality is we've got some of the best people and we've developed them from scratch. So, I think if you're going to do this properly, you've got to invest. You've got to invest your time. I watch too many people that are like super brainy out there doing things, and then they need a team and they just don't manage them.
Yeah.
They manage the client but not the team, and you've got to spend equal time on client and team.
So how do you think about that? Because that's something that we've been discussing internally. Like, I read a very good book on incentives and stuff like that. So I'm curious, how do you, in a service business where people can move pretty easily, how do you look to retain people?
Yeah, and look, it has got harder as we've gone through the years, and we've still managed to do it, but the demands become harder. They buy houses, they get married, all these things, like the age group changes. I think for us, a lot of people work with us because we do the biggest projects and the best projects, and people openly say they've left their business to come and work with us, which also does concern me, because that typically means I'm getting experienced up to go and do something else, but that's fine. Our younger guys, we've always had a process where we're trying to get people into equity, so we've now got 21 shareholders in various shareholding, and that's been one of the key things for us is a retention strategy. We've always paid well to people. We've always not taken a corporate position, which is, screw everything down and make your profit in 1 year. It's always been a longer term view on that.
Yeah.
A lot of training, teaching. We've got some very young guys that are running some really big projects that they wouldn't be nowhere near if they weren't working with us.
Yeah.
So we don't look at age as a limiter either. It's about if you got the talent and you can sort of show your work ethic, will give you a go.
How do you view the equity component versus say going for bonuses? Is it because you want people to buy in further, and what's sort of the pushback that you can get?
I've had both. I've had people that don't want equity and just want bonuses. So we typically will come up with a pretty open book profit sharing type scenario where we start to show the financials of the business and people start sharing in the benefits of the business. Not so good when COVID hits last year and things go a bit backwards and they go, well, hang on, that's not as good as my last year. You go, yeah, no worries, but that's called COVID impacting our numbers. But I think it's about openness. Like if you're willing to be open with everyone, I think I've worked for so many businesses where they don't tell anyone. It's all the hidden type thing. For us, we're pretty open about our financials, where we're up to. We give the whole company monthly updates on financials and how we're tracking, where our problem points are. And at a shareholder and a profit sharing position, we talk about the profitability and where we're going to go and what we're going to do. So it's about probably having a vision of where you're wanting to go. But also, I'm very clear that my time in the business is a certain time. And at that point, I should be moving on and someone should be taking over. And I think the worst you can have is a founder that just sits in the way of everything that goes on.
Yeah, and then you get that glass ceiling.
Yeah, and so we've seen that with so many other companies where you'll have 2 major or 3 major shareholders in the business, and there's huge turnover of middle management because they've got nowhere to go. We won't be that. So we're on a process of, Milan and myself have always been on a process of selling down and diluting shareholding to try and grow the whole pie up and make it sustainable. And then we have a forced sale scenario each year where new shareholders get a chance to buy in.
Okay.
So it's been and that was the SKM. SKM had, I don't know, 10,000 shareholders or something across SKM, or whatever it was huge. But everyone owned a little bit, but it didn't matter how much you owned, it was your business, right?
Yeah.
You told everyone. And I think it set the scene for, if you're a minor shareholder and you had a whole department that was stuffing around, they would actually self-regulate what was going on. So, yeah, I think you've got to be willing to give something to get something.
Yeah,
sort of
yeah.
the thought process.
I think I preferred that option. I think Tiro Payments did that really well in the fintech space, and I think that for sale thing is really handy each year. But getting people to buy in and see your perspective is key, I think, and what I'm eyeing off at least. All right, rapid fire questions to finish things off. What's the morning routine look like?
So it's been pretty stuffed up with COVID and what the morning routines turn on the computer and start your video conferencing, but and just make sure from the top up you look about 7:30 sort of what it was when it was really flat out. That was the time it was going. Hence why I put on so much weight and other things during that time. So the routine on this side is trying to get back to normal, so for me is getting up, going for a ride, doing something in the morning, and then what I found when I was probably at my mental best was I'd ride to work 3 or 4 times a week and just use that time, no phone calls, nothing. It's 40 minutes.
Just on your own
and just concentrate and don't hit anyone on the bike path or whatever. But it was, I think your brain gets going, you're thinking, whereas I find when I jump in the car, you're in traffic, you've got people ringing you, going, nothing but problems. I don't get the phone call to say everything's going well, traffic. Those phone calls don't exist. So I think you're trying to avoid that for as much as you can. And now I've just told my EA to block out 3 times a week for boxing at lunchtime. So I'm going to try. I think if you can try and get some exercise going, you're better at what you do. I think I just found that through COVID, I was just eating, watching the computer, and I just wasn't present in a lot of meetings. So you're just worn out. So I think make sure that we always try to finish at 5. That's our goal, and so especially when I had a young family, was to go home, try and bath the kids or do. That's gone a little bit, just the nature of it. But we don't want to. We don't force people to stay there till 7, 8 o'clock at night and all those sorts of things that companies do. So we try to encourage everyone to get home.
But you need to get out of your head, I think, because otherwise you're not creative enough, you're not thinking high level enough, and you're just stuck in the weeds a bit.
You're just doing, and I think that you're going along with it. And I think what our company needs is thought, process, and strategic direction. So for me, if I'm swamped and I'm not concentrating, we're just going down the road. 3 months later, we're doing the same shit that we've always done.
So evening routine, how do you sort of decompress?
I'm pretty bad, I've got to say, because I'm on my phone a lot, and it depends if you talk to my wife or not, but I tend not to talk to anyone at night, so I just crap on all day, and then I get home and I'm worn out, and I don't really talk, and so for me, it's riding home. If I can get a bike ride in home, that's the decompress, and then I'm more engaged when I get home. I think that's probably the sign of COVID was just the hours that people were doing, and the lack of engagement with the rest of the family because they're there. You're locked in your house all day. It's the same thing.
Non-stop.
Do you have the
opportunity to watch any TV shows? Have there been any TV shows, movies of late?
I watch the crappiest TV of all time because my wife chooses the channel, so I just watch whatever. But
we're talking Maths or The Bachelor.
Maths, a bit of Below Deck is the latest one. Yeah. So I'll watch whatever. But
I can understand that. Like that is a way of decompressing because you don't have to. It's a form of escapism, and you don't have to really think about it.
You don't think, yeah. I think a lot of times you're doing work, like you just pull the computer out.
You're on your phone, I'm guilty of that too.
Yeah, but I watch crap,
Last question for you. If you could have a billboard anywhere in Victoria or Melbourne, let's say, where would you place it? first of all, so think about placement.
Yeah.
And there's a few go-to spots that people look for. And then what would you put on it?
I think we put it maybe on the top of the silos near Punt Road or somewhere there. The Neuralle sign would be good. I just get shit done. Like that's all I'd say on it. I think I'm so frustrated with people trying to overthink things and and people expecting that the world's going to fall at their feet. I think the people that I think go somewhere in life just get shit done.
Yeah, and I'd agree with that. I've actually had that recently with a client in the e-commerce space where they just couldn't understand how decisions they'd made were going to impact them and that they weren't doing the things they need to do. And I just said, look, we're not going to do any work until you engage us, put together this spreadsheet. And then I finally put together and showed them, like, this is your situation. And sometimes people just need to do basic stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like nut stuff out, literally, as you would have found in the early years, like break things down into little tasks, do it out of your bedroom, work on the weekends. I think we were listening to your interview last night after dinner, and you were speaking about the fact that there's a lot of weekends involved.
Yeah.
And people are surprised when they hear that I'm working, yesterday, public holiday, but that's sort of what you got to do.
That's the nature of it. And I think if you enjoy what you do, you'll do it. But equally, you've got to be driven. Like, I think the amount of people that come in and go, all right, tell me what to do. Well, what are you going to do? So for me, I want those people working with me. For me, I want to be tested and tried every day. I don't want anyone just saying, yes, I'll do this, I'll do that. I want people to really just be get shit done type people.
Yeah. Travis, thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Where can people find yourself and TM Insight on the interwebs?
Yep, so www.tminsight.com, but about to be changed to www.tmx.global.
Ooh.
So that's coming
when will that be like?
I think mid to late Feb.
Oh, that's very exciting.
Yeah, so you'll still get there with the TM Insight, but it's bringing Exact and TM Insight together.
TMX Global.
TMX Global.
Yeah. And you no longer have, when I was doing my notes, I ended up having like 5 pages here. Every time I wrote TM Insight, you probably had it over the years where I don't know what it is, but Google or whatever automatically converts the thing to trademark.
The TM,
Yeah, the TM.
So that'll be gone. So TMX will hopefully get rid of that.
Get rid of that little finicky problem. But thank you for coming in. We'll link all that stuff. And
Thanks for
I
having
thoroughly recommend anyone who's in the e-commerce space to check out what you guys are doing.
Yeah, come and have a chat. Yep,
definitely.
For sure.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for checking out this episode. If you do like it, please subscribe, and of course, like if you're watching the YouTube video as well. We'd really appreciate that. You can also find our Clips channel in the description. For audio, if you're not already listening, you can search Uncommon on Pocket Cast, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts quite easily. For video, if you're not watching, you can search Uncommon on YouTube. And for behind-the-scenes takes and clips on social media, then definitely check out @uncommon_show on Instagram. But otherwise, look, thanks so much for tuning in, and until next time, thanks for listening.